The last thing Mara's brother said to her was, "If you hear someone tapping, don't look at the window." That warning arrived 2 days after his body was pulled from underneath the lake, bloated and impossibly contorted, fingers curled like he died clawing at something no one else could see. They told Mara it was an accident. His car had gone off the icy road and sunk into black water, vanishing beneath a layer of early November frost. But that wasn't true. Mara had felt it even before she saw the photos. There were no skid marks, no broken guardrails. His car had been parked neatly by the shoreline, headlights off, keys still in the ignition, door wide open, as if he'd walked in. Now, 3 weeks later, she was here, at the cabin. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she stared at the house's silhouette, its reflection lying perfectly still in the lake, even though the wind was shaking the trees behind her. A dull pressure throbbed behind her ears. The same feeling she'd had at his funeral. A presence, like someone watching from behind her shoulder, like a breath held too long. The key was still under the stone frog. Inside, the cabin smelled like damp wood and old fabric. Familiar, too familiar. Nothing had changed, not even the coffee mug still sitting beside the sink, as if her brother had just stepped out and forgotten to come back. The floor creaked in the same places. The radio still hissed when turned on, catching nothing but a low, static whisper. The lake pressed itself against the back windows, like a wall of black glass. No ripples, no moonlight, just a smooth, silent eye watching. Mara lit the fireplace and curled into the armchair, flipping open her brother's old journal. Half the pages were blank. But near the end, she found something odd, scratched into the paper, over and over. "Don't look at the window. Don't look at the window. Don't look. Don't. Don't." It didn't say why. Then the tapping started. 3 slow knocks, just behind the curtain. Fingernails against the glass. Mara didn't move. She held her breath and stared at the floor, heart slamming against her ribs. The knocking stopped. A pause. Then, tap, tap, tap. She squeezed her eyes shut, and then she heard it. The sound of the window slowly sliding open. Mara didn't breathe for nearly a full minute. She couldn't. Her lungs had locked up as if her own body was trying to keep her absolutely still, like prey. The wind outside had died completely, and the cabin had gone so quiet she could hear the blood rushing behind her ears. The window behind the curtain had stopped moving, but the cold in the room had shifted, dropped a few degrees instantly, as if someone had stepped inside. She forced her legs to move, slow and trembling, one knee at a time as she slid off the armchair and crouched low behind it. She didn't look at the window. She wouldn't. Her brother's warning looped in her head like a lifeline. "Don't look at the window. Don't." She crawled backward toward the hall, reaching for the phone she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her fingers grasped it, finally, only to feel the screen's dead weight. No signal, just like earlier, just like always up here. She swallowed hard, her breath fogged in front of her face. Then creaked, the sound of the wood groaning under weight, but not hers. A second creak, closer, deliberate. Something was walking across the living room floor. She dared to glance under the armchair. Just shadows, no feet, but she could feel it, the pressure in the air, the wrongness. Her chest ached from holding her breath too long, and when she inhaled again, the air was colder, sharper, like ice had formed somewhere nearby. Then a new sound, not footsteps, not tapping, but a long, slow drag, like wet cloth being pulled across wood. She bit down on a scream. The curtain fluttered slightly behind the chair. She could see the hem of it brushing the floor now, and beyond it, a shape. Something standing just on the other side. Not moving, not speaking. A hand appeared from behind the fabric. Pale, soap. The skin was water-wrinkled, bluish-gray, bloated. It moved stiffly, fingers spreading one by one like they didn't want to obey. Then it rested, pressed flat against the curtain. Mara stared at it. That was a mistake, because the hand turned, slowly, and with the back of its fingers facing her, it curled once, beckoning her toward the window. She bolted, down the hall, into the first room she could reach. The door slammed behind her. She locked it, shoved the dresser in front of it, and collapsed into the corner by the bed, curling into herself like a child hiding from thunder. Everything was still for a long time. Then she heard it again. Tap on the window in this room. Tap, tap, slow, patient. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Then came the whisper, so close to her ear it might have been inside her own head. Why won't you look at me? Mara sat frozen for hours, or maybe only minutes. Time had become untrustworthy, stretched thin like ice over deep water. The room remained silent now, but the cold had settled into her skin, and it wasn't just the mountain air. The temperature had dropped enough that her breath fogged faintly every time she exhaled. Her fingers were stiff and pale. Her knees pressed to her chest, one hand still clutching the phone that refused to connect. Outside the door, nothing moved. No more footsteps. No dragging sounds. No more tapping on the glass. Just quiet, but not peace. Not even close. The thing she'd seen, the hand, was burned into her mind. The skin had looked like it had been submerged for too long. Wrinkled like soap paper, but thicker. Slick with moisture. It hadn't just reached for her. It wanted something. Mara stood slowly, muscles aching, and forced herself to look around the room. It was her brother's old bedroom. The bed was still unmade from the last time he visited the cabin. The sheets carried the smell of old cologne and lake water. A desk stood in the corner, cluttered with notebooks, pens, and a cracked Polaroid camera. A coat hung over the desk chair, dry and untouched. But the mirror, she hadn't noticed it before. It sat across from the bed, a full-length antique mirror they'd brought up in the basement years ago, when the cabin was first renovated. Her brother had hated that thing. She remembered now. He used to keep it covered with a sheet. The sheet was gone, and the surface of the mirror didn't reflect the room properly. It was subtle at first. The light shifted wrong. Her reflection stood still even when she moved. Then it blinked. Mara recoiled, heart slamming against her ribs. She stepped back, but the reflection stayed still. And then it smiled, not a normal smile. The corners of the reflection's mouth stretched upward, too wide, too sharp. Its teeth gleamed yellow and slick. One of its eyes twitched. And Mara realized, too late, that the reflection wasn't wearing her clothes. It had on a soaked sweater, her brother's old hoodie, bloated and sagging with lake water. You left me down there, the reflection mouthed silently. Mara stumbled backward, reaching for the door, her hand blindly clawing at the lock. The reflection stepped forward. Tap. The mirror quivered slightly. Tap, tap. Cracks spiderwebbed outward from the center of the glass, thin as veins. Behind the mirror, she heard it. Something breathing. She threw the lock and pulled the door open, knocking the dresser aside with desperate shove. The hallway was darker now, dimmer than before, and the cabin felt deeper, as if its walls had stretched and twisted while she was inside. The windows had fogged over. The fire in the living room was dead, and from the kitchen came a single, sharp click, the sound of the sink turning on. She stepped forward, drawn in despite herself. The faucet ran in a thin, steady stream, brown water spilling into porcelain. No sound of pipes, no gurgle, just that slow, unnatural flow. Then she saw it, the trail of wet footprints leading away from the sink, not toward the front door, but deeper into the cabin, toward the basement door, which now stood slightly ajar, and something was watching her from the gap. Mara's throat tightened. Her voice caught somewhere between a breath and a scream she dared not release. The basement door hadn't been open when she arrived. She hadn't even touched it. It yawned now just enough to show the thick, black nothing behind it. No stairs, no shape, just void. The trail of wet footprints led directly to it and vanished into the darkness, as if the weight of the thing that made them had simply sunk. The faucet was still running, that rusty stream pulsing down the drain, like a vein slowly bleeding out. She turned it off with shaking hand. But even after the water stopped, the sound didn't. Drip, drip, drip. Now it came from inside the basement. Measured, rhythmic. She stepped backward, foot brushing something soft. The sheet, the one from the mirror. It was now lying on the floor. soaked through and smelling faintly of rot and algae. She didn't remember touching it. She didn't remember it ever being in the hallway. Then came the whisper again. "Come down. I can't find the light." Her brother's voice. But wrong. Too slow. Stretched like a recording played half-speed. Familiar, but with none of the warmth. It echoed up from the black beneath the basement door, each word sliding over her skin like a wet breath. Mara backed up until she hit the far wall. She kept her eyes locked on the crack of space between the door and the frame, waiting to see movement. Fingers, a face, something. But there was nothing, just black, and that voice, soft and pleading. "It's cold. I waited. You promised you'd come back." "I didn't promise anything," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, you did." A pause. Then, on the dock, "Remember? You said you wouldn't leave me behind." "No." "Then why did you run?" She pressed both hands over her ears. The sound didn't stop. It came from inside her head now. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She yanked it out, desperate for a signal, for something real. The screen had lit up on its own. A message notification. Unknown number. Look at the stairs. Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to. Every instinct screamed not to. But slowly, breath hitching, Mara turned her gaze toward the basement opening. A shape had appeared, low to the ground, just inside the doorway. Small at first, about the size of a dog. It crouched there, still and pulsing faintly like it breathed without lungs. Wet, glossy. It wasn't her brother. She didn't know what it was. Then it moved, jerking forward on all fours. The limbs didn't bend right. They scraped the wooden stairs with slick, dragging sound. One arm was too long, elbow joint twisted backward. Its hand slapped the floor, fingers spread and trembling like seaweed caught in a current. It climbed the stairs without making a sound. Mara turned and ran. She didn't think, just bolted for the bedroom, slammed the door behind her, shoved the desk and chair against it, heart hammering. She collapsed into the corner again, gasping. This time, she made the mistake of looking at the mirror. It hadn't cracked. It was whole again, but she wasn't in it. Her reflection was gone. The mirror showed only the bedroom behind her, and something rising up from under the bed. The bed creaked, not loudly, just a whisper motion, as if something was shifting beneath the mattress. The sound shouldn't have been audible over Mara's breathing, but it was. She watched the mirror, unblinking, every muscle drawn tight. Something was rising. It moved slowly. No rush, no need to hurry, as if it knew exactly where she was and that she had nowhere else to go. A lump formed on the bedspread, vague and shapeless at first, but growing, lifting the fabric inch by inch. The edge of the blanket curled upward, folding over the thing's slick form like the tide retreating from a buried shape. In the mirror, it looked wrong. Larger than the space beneath the bed should have allowed. Limbs stretching out longer than they could possibly fit. A wet sheen clung to its back, glistening like a slug's trail in moonlight. Its fingers appeared first. If they were fingers, thin and impossibly long, jointed in too many places, scraping the hardwood with a whisper. Mara turned away from the mirror and stared at the actual bed, her breath caught in her throat. The blanket was still undisturbed. No sign of movement. But the mirror told a different story. The thing slithered out slowly, head first. If it had a head, there were no eyes, only a hole where the face should have been, round and puckered like a drowned mouth, gaping open in silent hunger. It reached for her. The mirror flickered, and suddenly it was gone. Mara jumped to her feet. The room was empty. The mirror reflected only her, pale, trembling, wild-eyed. Her chest rose and fell with shallow, rapid breaths. Sweat soaked the collar of her shirt. The silence that followed was worse than the whispers. Then, thump, from beneath her feet. She backed away from the mirror. Thump, thump, two more from below, deeper than the floorboards. Something big was down there now. The door rattled suddenly, just once. Not a knock, not an attempt to open it. Just a tremor, like something had bumped into it by mistake, or maybe on purpose. She pressed her ear to the wall and heard it. Soft dragging, like something moving in a low crawl outside her room, not on feet, on its belly. It stopped right outside the door. Then came the breath, long, deep, nasal, inhaling her scent through the crack beneath the frame. Mara stepped back, careful not to make a sound, the desk and chair blocking the door shutter. Then again, a low creak of wood shifting under pressure. Then it was quiet. The silence didn't last long. From the mirror behind her came a new sound, a laugh, low, hoarse, childlike. She turned slowly and saw herself again. This time, her reflection was perfect. Same clothes, same expression, but her eyes were gone. Hollow black pits stared back at her, weeping something dark and slow. The reflection moved first, its head tilting unnaturally to the side. Then it raised one hand and pointed, not at her, at the closet. Mara turned. The closet door was open just a crack, and inside, barely visible in the dark, something breathed in unison with her. The breath matched hers. In, out, a second behind. She took a step back, and the thing in the closet responded, not with sound, but with presence. Something in the dark leaned forward. The crack of the door widened as if to watch her better, the hinges stretching with a dry, aching groan. She didn't remember opening the closet, didn't remember ever opening it. It had been closed when she got here. Mara's eyes flicked back to the mirror. Her reflection had vanished again. Only the room remained, empty, but she knew better now. The breathing hadn't stopped. In, out, and now it sounded wet, thicker, not from lungs, from gills maybe, or some other organ never meant to breathe this kind of air. It struggled with each breath like it hurt just to be here. Her throat burned. The air in the room had turned thick and warm, heavy with the stink of brine and mildew. A thin sheen of condensation slid down inside of the windows. Her fingertips felt pruned, as if she'd been soaking too long in cold. Standing water. The closet creaked again. She reached for the lamp beside the bed. It didn't turn on. No electricity. Or maybe it just didn't want to work. She moved with slow, measured steps toward the closet, arms shaking. The silence now felt too aware, like it was holding its breath along with her. She gripped the closet knob. The doorknob was wet. Not damp, slick. She froze. Her palm stuck to it by a thick layer of some unseen mucus. She yanked her hand back and stumbled, falling onto the floor just as the door eased open a few more inches on its own. No sound, just stillness. Then a hand crept out. Not fast, just slow, slipping forward across the floor. Fingers spread wide like a starfish dragging itself across a titapool. Its skin was too pale. No nails, no fingerprints. Skin stretched tight and waxy, and it paused every few inches as though testing the air for her scent. Mara crawled backward, hard in her throat. The chair braced against the door. Behind her shifted with a sharp scrape. She turned her head for only a second. When she looked back, the closet was closed, shut tight. No hand, no sound, just the closet door, still as it had been before. And the smell remained, thick and low, like seawater trapped in a dead whale's mouth. Mara stood. She didn't want to, but she had to. Her mind buzzed now with static, her heartbeat pounding so loud she couldn't hear the outside world anymore. She moved toward the door. The chair she'd shoved under the knob earlier had split clean down the middle, like something had pressed down with too much weight, too much intent. The wood looked soaked from the inside, dark, mushy, hollow. She unlocked the door and opened it. The hallway was dark, but not empty. Down the far end, near the stairs, stood a reflection. The same clothes, same posture, only backwards. The head tilted at a strange angle, feet turned the wrong way. It didn't move. It just watched. And Mara suddenly realized something. It wasn't a reflection anymore. It was waiting for her to blink. Mara blinked. Just once. And the thing that looked like her was gone. The hallway stretched out in both directions, dim and unfamiliar, longer than it had been earlier. Too long now. The walls seemed to bow outward. the ceiling gently sagging like the inside of a tent left too long in the rain. Faint wallpaper patterns crawled in the dark, paisley prints moving subtly like worms beneath thin skin. She stepped out. The floor was soft, not like carpet, like memory foam that breathed. It sank under her weight with a damp squelch and didn't rebound. Each step was harder than the last. The air pressed around her shoulders, thick and oily. It smelled like copper and rot. The lights didn't work. None of them did. She tried every switch she passed, each one making a hollow click, like tapping a bone against wet wood. The bulbs above remained dead, but somehow the hallway was still visible, lit by nothing, yet not in darkness. She passed the first door on the right. It was the room she'd come from. But the number on the door, room 3, was wrong. There had been no numbers before, and now this one was carved, not printed, into the wood, freshly gouged, deep, uneven. She didn't remember staying in a place with numbered rooms. She didn't remember checking in at all. Keep walking. Something in her head whispered, don't go back. But room 4 came next, then room 5, each numbered deeper, darker, as if someone or something was carving the marks one room at a time, just ahead of her. Mara paused in front of room 6. There was no handle, only a dark smear where a knob should have been. The door looked bruised, like it had been hit from the inside. Something had scraped at it, long gouges across the wood, what was sap or blood. She didn't want to know. She kept going. Her footsteps slowed. The hallway was growing colder now, a slow gradient, like descending into a cellar. Her breath fogged faintly in front of her. The smell changed again, less rot, more salt, brine and iron, and then music, faint, warbled, a children's lullaby, slowed to half speed, playing from an old phonograph just out of view. The notes were off-key, dragging too long between bars. A voice followed, soft, whispering along the tune. And when you sleep beneath the floor, they'll come a feed, they'll want some more. She passed room 9. The door was cracked open, only a sliver. Inside, nothing moved, but she could see the bed, the sheets, a stain spreading slowly from the center, warm and glistening under no visible light. It pulsed once. She didn't stop to see it pulse again. She picked up her pace. Room 10, room 11, then a hallway turn. Sharp, sudden, impossible. The building shouldn't have had a corner here. There wasn't space for it. But now the hall turned hard left, and Mara, too tired to question it, followed. This hall was narrower, just one door, no number, just a word here scratched into the wood with such force that splinters stuck out like teeth. The smell behind was unbearable, meat and salt and wet stone. And from behind that door, she heard breathing again, but this time it wasn't copying hers. It was leading, in, out, and it wanted her to follow. Mara did not want to touch the door. The word here stared back at her, jagged and raw, not carved by hand. Scratched, maybe, by something too stubborn to stop. The splinters around the letters curled like old bark peeled from trees. She waited, but the door didn't move. There was no handle, just a flat plank, breathing faintly beneath her fingers as she reached out. The wood wasn't wood anymore. It had gone soft, not rotted, not warm, pliable, like cartilage under stretched skin, like a cheek. That didn't belong to anyone human. She pushed. It didn't creak. It sank inward, then gave way entirely, folding open like wet cloth pulled from a drain. And what lay behind it was not a room. It was down, a ladder, metal rungs bolted into rough concrete, slick with condensation, dropping into blackness so total her breath caught in her throat. The air that rose from below had no scent, but it carried something else, memory. Her memory. A tiny voice whispered from the dark below, "Don't come back here, Mara." It was hers, her voice as a child, 8 years old. She recognized the cadence, the scared little tone she used when she spoke to herself under the covers. She remembered whispering that sentence, but not where or why. Her knees locked, but her hands betrayed her. One touched the ladder, then the other. Cold spread instantly from her fingertips into her chest. She felt the chill slip beneath her ribs, curling around her lungs like vines that had waited for her return. She climbed, rung by rung. Each metal bar moaned under her weight, not from strain, but as if it mourned her decision. The walls narrowed the farther down she went. Wet concrete turned to stone, then to something older, black clay, veined with pale threads like root systems beneath a dying garden. After what felt like minutes, her foot touched dirt. She was underground, a cavern, too vast, too silent. She turned. Behind her, the tunnel was gone, just packed earth and a low ceiling, arching like a rib cage. Shallow pools of water dotted the ground, reflecting faint, impossible light from above. The light had no source, no color, just awareness. And across the chamber, she saw it. A house, small, childlike, made of nailed wood, leaning slightly, like a model built by a trembling hand. The door hung crooked. The windows were blacked out with strips of cloth, and the porch sagged under the weight of nothing. Mara took one step toward it. The ground quivered, and she heard them, voices, all her voice, from different times, different ages, whispering from every direction at once. Don't go in. We told you not to come back. It remembers. We buried it. You were supposed to forget. But her feet moved anyway. The closer she got, the more she remembered. A basement, a game, a box nailed shut, a smell that never left her clothes. Something missing from her memories, not because she forgot, but because something took it. She stepped onto the porch. It didn't creak. It sighed. The door opened without her touching it. Inside, it was too dark to see, but she knew what was in there. She had always known. The doorway swallowed her. No breeze, no chill, just absence, a vacuum of sensation. The second Mara stepped inside. The ground flattened and the strange earthy pulse stopped. No more squish beneath her boots, no warm breath from the walls. It was like walking into a room that had been dead for centuries, not abandoned but sealed. Her eyes adjusted slowly. The interior of the house was impossibly small. One room, walls made of tongue-and-groove pine, warped and rippling, as though soaked with invisible tides. Dust hung thick in the air, unmoving. A single bulb dangled from a chain in the center, swaying faintly despite the absence of any wind. It wasn't the bulb that lit the room. It was the box. It sat dead center on the warped wooden floor, 4 feet long, rough cedar, one stained dark, but now nearly black with time, and something far worse than rot. Dozens, no hundreds, of rusted nails protruded from every side, hammered in at wild angles. Some bent, some broken, none neat. It looked as if it had been attacked with a hammer, rather than constructed. Each nail was smeared with something dark and clotted. Mara didn't move. The whispers were gone now. So was the sound of her breath. The bulb above spun slowly. Not fast, not rhythmic. A slow, sad circle, as if mourning above the nailed coffin. Its motion made the shadows around the box dance, stretching long limbs across the floor like broken fingers reaching from below. She took a step forward. The wood beneath her foot cracked softly, not like a floorboard, like a knuckle, then again, and again, until she stood just a few feet from the box. It pulsed, not physically, but inside her chest, she felt it, a throb that matched no rhythm of her body, a deep, resonant thump that passed through her sternum like someone whispering into her ribs. And then came the memory, not a thought, not a dream, a memory of her and 2 other children, shapes now blurred by time and fear, carrying something heavy down a flight of basement stairs. A wooden box, this very one. She remembered nails, blood on her hands, someone crying. She remembered whispering, "We have to do this. It'll never stop if we don't." She remembered silence after, and then nothing, until now. The bulb stopped swaying, and the box made a sound, a soft shifting, like fabric being moved, like someone adjusting under blankets. Then a thump from inside, followed by 3 rapid knocks, loud and desperate. Tap, tap, tap. Mara froze. Her heart wanted to run, but her legs had locked. Another knock, then a voice. Muffled but clear. Familiar. You left me here. Mara staggered back. She hit the wall. Her mind raced. The box hadn't been for her. It had been because of her. The thing inside wasn't a stranger. It was a sacrifice. A child-shaped shape with a face she had once known, buried in darkness, forgotten by every part of her that didn't want to remember. You said you'd come back, the voice inside murmured. A nail slipped out of the wood, clattering to the floor. Then another. The lid began to rise, just barely, held in place by remaining nails that creaked like splintering bones. You promised. It said again, this time clearer. She turned to run, but there was no door. The entry behind her was gone. In its place was a wall of flesh, pink, veined, pulsing faintly, trapping her inside, trapping it inside. The nail box rattled, and the bulb above began to flicker, strobe-like, casting still images of the box rising, inch by inch, a pale hand pushing outward between nails, small, childlike, but stretched too far, like the bones had grown without the skin's permission. Let me out. The hand pushed farther through the broken slit in the box, knuckles first, wrist cracking sideways, fingers flexing too slowly, as if waking from a coma. They were long, wrong, not quite human. The nails weren't fingernails. They were claws, soft and wet, like something still growing. Still remembering how to be a child, Mara backed into the corner. There was no exit, just that soft, pulsing wall behind her, warm and humming. It felt alive. Worse, it felt familiar. The voice spoke again, quieter, younger. Do you remember what you promised me, Mara? She shook her head, mouth open but silent. The bulb above her sputtered again. This time it stayed off for 3 full seconds. In that darkness, the sound was splitting echo to the tiny house. Nails fell like pins onto floorboards, one by one. Tiny metallic screams of resistance. Then the bulb flared back. The lid was open. The thing inside had pulled itself halfway out. Its body was curled, as if it hadn't unfolded in years. The skin was the color of wax left in the sun too long, slick in places, flaking in others. Its hair was matted to its face, and though it didn't look up, Mara could tell it had no eyes. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over the sockets, as if its face had tried to forget itself. She remembered now. A boy. His name was Ellis. He'd lived next door when they were small. Always lonely. Always watching from his window. Never allowed to come out. They used to pass notes through the slats in the fence. Drawings. Stories. One day, he told her something lived in his house. Something under it. It whispered to him at night and asked to wear his skin. Said it wanted to go outside. Wanted to see the sky. He begged her for help. He begged her to stay. But she had been scared. She'd told him she would come back, that she'd fix it, that she'd help him seal it away, just for now, until it stopped. She remembered her fingers hammering nails with a brick. Ellis had cried, but not out loud. He cried inside. Mara stepped toward the box, slow, ashamed. The thing turned its face toward her. Its mouth was open, too wide, teeth like wet pebbles, tiny and broken. But it didn't smile. It didn't rage. It waited. You were supposed to come back, it said. The voice didn't match the face. It was still his. Sweet, small, sad. Mara kneeled. Her hand hovered above the edge of the box. The thing reached up and placed its hand on hers. Its skin was soft, damp, trembling. She remembered the last night before they'd sealed the box. Ellis had drawn something. A picture of her holding his hand in a field. She remembered the crayon lines. How careful he had been. He'd asked her to take it with her. She'd left it in the box. I'm sorry, she whispered. The thing blinked with skin that had no eyes. It's cold in here, it said. Then another voice joined it, from the shadows and the rafters, from beneath the floorboards, from within the wall of flesh behind her. We're all still waiting. Dozens of them. Children, each one a voice she hadn't known she'd forgotten. Names buried by time, by guilt or fear. They'd all been left behind. Each one sealed away in pieces of memory. She'd walled off to survive, and now they were waking. The light flickered again. And in that brief darkness, she saw their shapes, small, broken, stitched together from nightmares, emerging from corners and seams and forgotten closets. They moved slowly, not to hurt her, to be held, to be seen, to be remembered. The thing in the box gripped her hand tighter, not forcefully, just clinging. Stay with me this time. And she realized it wasn't asking for forgiveness. It was asking for presence, for witness, for someone to sit with it in the dark, forever. The darkness thickened around Mara like an endless shroud, pressing in closer with every breath she took. The house was no longer a simple prison, but a gathering place, a sanctuary of forgotten things, memories too heavy for the light above. One by one they came, from the walls, from beneath the floorboards, and through the cracks in the ceiling. Faint silhouettes began to emerge, shapes formed from shadows and broken whispers, each figure mosaic of loss and despair. Children with hollow eyes and pale skin, faces blurred like watercolors left in rain, all reaching toward her with hands trembling in need. Mara didn't move. She let them approach. They surrounded her silently, their presence a cold wave washing over her skin, seeping deep into her bones. She could feel their stories twisting around her, tangled with her own, the broken threads of forgotten promises and unspoken fears. One of them stepped forward, a girl with hair like wet moss and eyes that flickered like dying stars. She reached out and brushed Mara's cheek with fingertip, so cold it stung. "We waited," she whispered, voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "You left us waiting." Mara swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. "I'm here now." The children closed in tighter, their breath mingling with hers, the scent of wet earth and salt filling the air. And then the house began to tremble. Walls bent and twisted, with groaning as if alive. The nail box in the center cracked open fully now, a dark maw yawning beneath the faint glow of the dying bulb. The children's whispers grew louder, overlapping in a mournful chorus that filled every corner of the room. "Stay with us," they pleaded. "Stay." Mara felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her, the culmination of all the lost moments and shattered lives that had been trapped in this place. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, surrounded by the cold, pleading hands of forgotten. The last light flickered out. The darkness settled over Mara like a heavy blanket, muffling every sound except the slow, rhythmic beat of her own heart. The children's voices had faded into a low hum, like the distant song of the lake at night, a lullaby that wrapped around her, neither comforting nor cruel, but endless. She remained on the floor, still surrounded by unseen hands, the cool touch of forgotten lingering like a faint breeze across her skin. Time lost meaning here. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into days, or perhaps it was only seconds. She couldn't tell anymore. All that existed was the silence after. The house itself seemed to breathe with her, inhaling and exhaling in slow, measured waves. The walls throbbed faintly, alive with the memories of the past, of promises made and broken, of children lost and left behind. Mara closed her eyes. In the darkness, she felt herself slipping, not falling, not fading, but melting, becoming part of the house, part of the waiting. A warmth spread through her, subtle at first, like the touch of a gentle hand on a cold cheek. It grew, filling her chest, until she felt weightless and whole, connected to everything and nothing all at once. A voice whispered, her voice, but older, softer. "Stay." And she stayed, for a time without measure. When she finally opened her eyes, the room was different. The walls were whole again, the air still and clear. The box lay closed, nails shining softly in the dim light. The children's hands were gone, their voices silenced like a dream fading at dawn. She was alone, but not empty. Mara rose slowly, legs weak but steady. The house felt less hostile now, like an old wound healing beneath the skin. Outside, the first pale light of morning crept through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. She stepped toward the door. It opened easily, and the air smelled of pine and rain. The lake outside was calm, reflecting a clear sky. Mara walked down the porch steps, feeling the weight of the night lift from her shoulders. Behind her, the house waited. Patient, Mara paused at the edge of the porch. her gaze drifting to the still surface of the lake stretching out beyond the trees. The water was glassy and calm, undisturbed by wind or life, perfectly mirroring the pale dawn sky. She saw herself in that reflection, her face pale, eyes wide with a mixture of exhaustion and something else she couldn't name. But as she stared longer, the image wavered, rippling like a stone had disturbed the surface. And then it shifted. Her reflection's eyes darkened, empty like the hollow sockets of the thing in the box. The smile she saw was slow, cruel, stretched too wide across a face that wasn't quite hers. A whisper rose from the water, soft as a sigh of the morning breeze. "You can't leave." Mara stumbled back from the edge. Her heartbeat thudded loud in her ears. The calm lake was a lie. She looked down at her hands, still trembling from the night's horrors. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the forest, but the chill in her bones refused to fade. Behind her, the cabin's door creaked. She spun around. No one was there, but the mirror inside the house had been watching, and the thing inside the reflection was waiting for her to return, because it never truly leaves. It waits. The days stretched out before Mara like an endless, gray sea, quiet and still, yet filled with whispers only she could hear. She wandered to the forest, footsteps soft against the damp earth, the scent of pine needles and moss heavy in the air. The sun was warm on her skin, but the shadows clung close, twisting around tree trunks and curling through the underbrush like silent fingers. Every now and then, the wind carried a faint murmur, voices she recognized but could not place. Children laughing, crying, calling her name in echoes that faded before she could respond. Mara's heart ached with a weight she could not shake. She tried to run, to leave this place behind, but the forest shifted. Paths she knew disappeared, replaced by new trails that led her deeper into the dark heart of the woods. The trees grew closer, their branches weaving a canopy that blotted out the sun. She was lost, and the whispers grew louder. "You belong here. You promise. Don't forget us." Her reflection flickered in the water of a small pool, eyes hollow, waiting. She reached out to touch it, and the world tilted. Darkness wrapped around her, pulling tight like a noose. Mara fell, falling through layers of memory and shadow, time folding over itself until she was both child and woman, prisoner and keeper. She landed softly, back inside the cabin. The box lay waiting, nails gleaming, the children's voices rising in a chorus of longing and regret. And Mara knew there was no escape, only the unending. Mara's eyes fluttered open to the dim glow of the cabin's interior, the weight of sleep or something worse, pressing heavily on her chest. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of earth and decay, a familiar mixture that clung to her like a second skin. She was back, not just in the cabin, but inside the endless cycle, the waiting room of forgotten promises and broken memories. The nailed box sat before her once more, its dark with stain and scarred by time, the nails protruding like the ribs of some ancient beast. Its lid creaked open just enough to reveal a pale hand, waiting, patient. Around her, the shadows stirred. The children, the forgotten, the lost. They reached out, their faces a blurred collage of hope and despair, eyes begging for release and remembrance. Mara knelt before the box, her fingers trembling as they hovered above the wood. She could feel the pulse beneath her skin, the heartbeat of the house itself, syncing with her own. A whisper rose from the darkness, a chorus of voices, soft and insistent. "Stay. Remember. Wait." The world faded to black, and Mara waited, waiting for the light to return, waiting for the box to close, waiting for the cycle to begin again, forever.